welcome all. Thanks for tuning in. Summer seems to have dipped out here in the UK for a while, but certainly the last few days have been good sparkling wine and Franciacorta weather. Thirsty work, if you needed an excuse to crack open a bottle or two of fizz. Right, I'm Andrew Catchpole, editor of Harpers Wine Spirit, and I have a great panel joining me today to discuss Franciacorta, and I'll be inviting them to introduce themselves in just a moment. So the title of today's session is Franciacorta, adding a splash of Italian style. So why are we discussing Franciacorta? Well, with sparkling wines, one of the few wine categories actually driving any growth in the UK, we've partnered with the Consorzio Franciacorta to explore the role that Italy's premier sparkling wine can play in potentially enhancing a rounded, engaging and commercially successful wine offer. We've all seen the success of the rise of English sparkling wine at a premium quality and price level. So one question in my mind is, what next to keep the momentum going? And I think part of what we're going to do today is to see if Franciacorta has what it takes to provide an answer to maybe tick that box. We're also going to look at the broader sparkling wine category in terms of how to continue to maintain momentum and growth there. So we're going to begin with a presentation from Franciacorta's Laura Gatti, introducing the region and the styles of wine it produces. Then we'll kick off into the discussion with our panel being asked to assess, as I said, what Franciacorta can add to a successful list. Luckily enough, for us, the panelists, we tried through a half dozen of Franciacortas, highlighting the different styles, the primary different styles of wine that the region makes. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. That's just as a backdrop to discussion, but talk a little bit about the flexibility within the category in terms of the differing styles and how it stands out and aside with its points of differences from other well-known sparkling wine regions. So let's begin by introducing the panel. Finally, I'll stop talking for a while. So first up, Laura, could I ask you to just say a few words about yourself and your role? Yeah. And hi, Laura.
Hi, and thanks for inviting us to this meeting. My name is Laura Gatti, and I'm winemaker in Franciacorta since something like 25 years, working in my family winery. And today I have the honor to represent the Consorzio Franciacorta as vice president. And we will do, as you told us, an introduction about the area, and I'm really curious to know something about Franciacorta from UK. So very, very curious to have information from you about the feeling of in our wines. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully we'll provide some good and interesting feedback actually during this session. So that's great. Yeah. Isabella, hi, good to see you.
Yeah, good afternoon.
You want to say just a couple of words about your background for those? I'm sure that most people in the audience will know all of you on the panel, but yeah, just a brief eye and an intro in your job role.
Absolutely. So I'm Isabella Gatti. I'm the champagne and sparkling wine buyer for Majestic. Prior to that, I was a wine sourcing manager for Asda for over 9 years as well. So
excellent. And I think I should point out that as far as I'm aware, the Gatti is just the surnames is just a complete coincidence, basically.
It is indeed, yeah. My dad is from the Lombardy region, but yeah. So
oh, fantastic! So it's in your blood. Fantastic. Okay. And Kent, hello, Kent. Where are you sitting there, Kent?
I'm in my restaurant in Frome in Somerset, and I own 3 restaurants that are wine shops, wine bars, and restaurants, and we focus very heavily on sustainability. So every wine we stock is 100% sustainable and traceable, and our food as well. So and we opened in Oxford a month ago.
Excellent. Good. That's well, hopefully good timing, just as everything sort of lifts off again. So,
yeah.
So good luck with that. And we'll be talking about sustainability a little as well. We'll definitely touch on that. So that'll be good. And Sara, hi. How are you doing?
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Sara Rossi. I'm head sommelier at Trinity for now almost 3 years. Trinity is a Michelin-star restaurant in Clapham Common, south of London, but also owned by the chef Adam Bayat. He also owns Bistro Union in Clapham North, and is English ingredients, like very seasonal and mostly French wine, I will say, but also, you know, the guests now, they are happy to discover other parts of the world, especially bubbles. So very happy to be here.
Good to hear. Good to have you here. Thank you. And Louise, hi Louise. It's been a while, as with most of you. I hope all well. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Louise Gordon. I work for Heckfield Place, which is in Hampshire. We're a country house hotel that has 438 acres of land, and over 300 of that is actually a certified organic and certified biodynamic farm, which feeds the hotel. So obviously sustainability is a big thing here. We aim to be as sustainable as we can. We relay any food waste back down to the farm. Some of it goes into the biomass to produce energy for the hotel itself. So we're trying to close the circles as much as possible. Very difficult with a relatively large hotel, but doing everything we can to get there.
Yeah, it's very impressive actually. So worth a trip there. So that's great. Okay, fantastic. Well, great to have you all on board. So I'm now going to hand over to Laura Gatti. And Laura, you're going to take us through, I think, some of the background on Franciacorta, just to bring us all up to speed a little more with the region.
Yeah. So let's start with some general information about Franciacorta region, starting from where we are. So we are in Lombardy, very close to Milano. I mean, 70 kilometers east from Milano, and our province is Brescia. And just a few information about the origin of the name. So the name Franciacorta comes from Franche Curtes, so from the Latin, or free courts. Nowadays we can call them duty-free. And in fact, after the arrival of Cluniac monks in the 11th century, the area was declared to be exempt from duties. And as about the wine, we have the origin really back in the past. So the grapevine has always found a home in our region. In 1500, the Brescian doctor Girolamo Conforti, in the book Libellus de Vino Mordaci, wrote of the outstanding aptitude of the Franciacorta area for producing mordacious or stunning wines, underscoring the significant distribution and widespread consumption, even in that area, of wine with bubbles, so a long history. We also found, according to the Napoleonic land registry, called in Italiano Catasto Napoleonico of 1800, that were more than 1,000 vine planted hectares dedicated to Fizzi wine. So this highlights the fact that winemaking, both for local consumption and for external commerce, was really deeply rooted in this area. As about the wine, Franciacorta was the first Italian wine produced exclusively by the method of secondary fermentation into the bottle. Today is really important to underline that the wine label simply reads Franciacorta. There's no other word, a single term that identifies the growing area, the production method, and the wine, Franciacorta, and that's all. The land lying to the south of Lake Iseo in the heart of Lombardy, as I told you, Franciacorta has a wide range of soil types. So even if we are a quite small wine area, we can grow grapes with very different styles thanks to the specific characteristic of our soils. And the climate of our area makes our wine area a natural wine territory. Franciacorta extends over 19 municipalities in the province of Brescia. And, but anyway, if you would like to come to visit us, there's also nice cultural heritage and history and superb countryside to visit. If we can observe Franciacorta and the Lake Iseo from the top, we can clearly see the shape of the Morenic amphitheater. It was formed a long time ago in the secondary and tertiary geological era by a large glacier coming from the north, from Val Camonica, And this glacier was divided in two branches immediately after the lake basins, a small to the west and a much larger to the east. The moraine originating soils of Franciacorta have an enormous wealth of added minerals, which are different to those derived only from the autochthonous rocks that we can find in the area. And this forms the basis for the area's high quality viticulture. You can see from this map, so in the north, up there, the Lake Iseo. In the south, we have a small mountain called Monte Orfano, that means Orphan Mountains. He is alone down there. And between these two north and south points, you can see all the different colors that represent the different soils of the area. So each soil gives to our grapes specific characteristics that can allow us to blend them together or to use as unique vineyard to give a specific identity and quality to our Franciacorta wines. And let's talk about the Consorzio that I have the honor to represent today. The Consorzio was founded in March 1990. This is a Consorzio, the name is Consorzio per la Tutela del Franciacorta, the full name. And we have over 200 members, divided in three professional categories: the growers that only produce grapes, the winemakers, and the bottlers. We have 121 consortium associated wineries, and this number represents 98% of the producers operating in the territory. So almost the total production of bottles are represented by the Consorzio Franciacorta. Another very important point that took a lot of time to study and a big investment is the sustainability. Today, the areas conducted under organic regulation is a little bit more than 2,000 hectares. And this represents 71% of the total hectares in Franciacorta, so a very high percentage. I think one of the higher percentage of organic viticulture in the wine area, for sure, in Italy. And as about the environmental sustainability studies, these guide the principle of the Consorzio strategy. So the researchers involved numerous vineyards and estates in Franciacorta in order to understand the dynamics of the insect population as a consequence of the cultivation practice and their repercussion on the health of the vines. This enabled growers to adopt less impactful intervention to protect their vineyards from specific pathogens, while it also highlights the importance for the producers of a vision that focuses on respecting the natural balance and an awareness of its environmental and agricultural benefits. I told you Franciacorta means wine area and method of production, and for sure wine. As about the method, Franciacorta represents an ancient art that unites in perfect symphony the most advanced technologies with the expertise of the local grape growers. Rigid and meticulous rules for obtaining wines of absolute quality is the order of the Consorzio Franciacorta and of its members producers, who utilize only the noble grape varieties, hand-picked, naturally fermented in the bottle, and then slowly matured and aged on the lees. Let's talk about the grapes, so the raw materials, the main ingredient of our job. Franciacorta is made with Chardonnay, Pinot Nero, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Bianco grapes. And Pinot Bianco is permitted up to maximum of 50%. If we talk about the total vineyards in the area, Chardonnay represents 85% of the total, Pinot Noir 15%, and just a small amount is represented by Pinot Bianco. Recently, we have introduced a new grape called Herbamat, and these grapes has been introduced in the rule book, and some wineries are starting now to work with it. Why Herbamat? Herbamat is an old white grape, varietal and indigenous, that comes from our province, so from the province of Brescia. And we found the first sign of the growing of these grapes since 16th century. Herbamat is now admitted in a maximum portion of 10% for all styles of Franciacorta except the Satin. And we are trying to study as much as we can, and step by step, it takes a long time, the possibility to increase the percentage of Herbamat in our Franciacorta blend. Herbamat is characterized by a late maturation, so it takes almost 1 month more than Chardonnay and Pinot. And Herbamat has a strong acidity that gives a contribution of freshness to Franciacorta, while preserving its identity. The vineyard of Franciacorta have a maximum yield of 10 tons per hectare, and the harvest that must be made only by hand take place normally from the first decade of August and the 1st of September. So normally it takes 1 month. And with the entire bunches, we do a soft pressing of the grapes to obtain a free run juice for the production of the Franciacorta base wine, which the spring after harvest will form our cuvée. After the very interesting process of doing the assemblage, the base wine for Franciacorta are bottled. And before being bottled, they receive a syrup composed of sugar and yeast. And the yeast will start a slow, natural re-fermentation of the wine. The bottles are sealed with a metal chrome cap and then strapped horizontally in the cellar, where they remain for a considerable time. After the aging on lees, the bottles are inserted into traditional reading racks in order to push the sediment and that yeast into the neck of the bottles. And finally, we go to the disgorgement. The metal plug and the sediments are removed. And with the addition of the liqueur d'expédition, a mixture of Franciacorta base wine and sugar, we determined the different styles of Franciacorta. We use the international classification, starting from Dosaggio Zero, arriving to the demi-sec. The only Franciacorta that doesn't receive sugar is the Dosaggio Zero, and here just a recap of the international classification of the different sweetness level, sorry. We have different flavor categories about Franciacorta. So Franciacorta, and here we can write together the characteristic with the minimum age on lees of 18 months. We have the Franciacorta Satin, and I would like to pay particular attention to this category of Franciacorta because, as you probably know, nowadays in Italy, there's the production of sparkling from the extreme north to the extreme south. All over the country, these wines, almost all over the countries, are called spumante, or simply sparkling. As I told you, only in our region we call this wine Franciacorta, and only in Franciacorta we can produce Satin. So this wine is really strictly related with the area and with the tradition of winemaking here. Satin must be a Blanc de Blanc. It has a minimum maturation on yeast of 24 months, even if it's not vintage, and a lower pressure, that means more creamy and delicate and also elegant taste. Then we have the Franciacorta Rose, where we have a minimum percentage of Pinot Noir, that's 35%, and again 24 months of aging on lees as minimum time of aging. And then we have the the Franciacorta Vintage, that should be Satin and Rosé also. And to finish the classification, the Franciacorta Riserva with 60 months minimum of aging on lees. Just a few numbers about our production. You can see the little decrease in 2020 due to COVID situation for sure, but in the last few years, the production is around 17 millions of bottles. You can see that the main market is Italy for sure, with a percentage of export that is increasing even in 2021. And here you can see the percentage of the different markets, foreign markets, where you can also find UK. Thank you. I hope to don't be boring. I'm also sorry, my English is really terrible, honestly, because it's a long time that I don't travel and my brain needs to train a little bit again with the language, sorry.
Your English was very clear, and actually it was a really, really useful overview, concise overview of the region. We've got a question from the audience already, but I have a couple of questions myself as well. I thought that the map showing the diversity of soils was absolutely incredible. And for those who haven't visited the Franciacorta region, there are other, certainly from a tourist perspective, more famous lakes, but it's an absolutely charming and really special, quite special area actually. And perhaps that Iseo is less well known outside of wine circles is maybe a good thing if you want to go and visit some real northern Italy. But my quick question was Sartan, and forgive my ignorance on this, but has that's always been a traditional style, but one that's becoming more prominent in response to, say, the market, or what were the origins for that lighter style, lower atmosphere style of sparkling wine?
Satin is a brand of the area. I mean, in the past, it used to be called Cremon, and then we received from France they avoid us to use this name, and doing a new rule book, we have decided to create a really personal wine, really a wine that belongs to the region. As you see in the PowerPoint presentation, the biggest part of the vineyards are planted with white grapes. So starting from there, we have created our Blanc de Blanc, giving him this name, Satin. That's a fantasy name, so it doesn't mean nothing. It's a French sound, but in an Italian style. And Satin wants to remind the silk. So the characteristic of this wine is that the bubbles are really creamy, really delicate, really like a velvet in the mouth. And the taste is very delicate and elegant also because we can use only white grapes. So the elegance of the Chardonnay together with the lower pressure. Then Satin must be a brut, so not too low dosage and at the same time not sweet, because we want to give really a perfect balance in the taste of the Satin. And all the wineries, almost all the wineries produce Satin, and it really represents in a unique way the area. So it's I think that when you start to approach to our wine region, the first thing you find opening the doors of the winery is the Franciacorta Brut. So the non-vintage represents a sort of business card. So you start to know us from there, and the next step must be the Franciacorta Satin for sure.
Excellent. And I know our panel are dying to sort of jump in and speak soon, but very quickly, because I did say to the audience, I did in the chat before, I forgot to say to everyone, please do ask questions as we go along. Michael Camps, hi Michael, has asked, why is the region experimenting with Herbamat? He asks, is it climate change? So maybe just a brief answer explaining a little more why Herbamat's coming to prominence. It's only small at the moment, but it's really fascinating to see that being kind of introduced or reintroduced.
Yeah, the climate changing and the quality, these are the two reasons why we are experimenting a new grape variety. I mean, first of all, we've tried to find a grape variety from the area, so something typical from the region. And we found herba mate that was here since 16th century. And this is because, as I told you, herba mate grow and arrive to the perfect ripening, and normally 1 month after the other grape variety. And as we are living some global warming and climate changes, and we must be prepared, we must be ready for the future. I mean, it takes really long time to find the variety, to plant the vines, to grow the grapes, to see the clones and the best selection that can help us to this purpose. And then we have to produce Franciacorta to see how this still wine can help us in our wines. And it takes at least another 5, 6, or 10 years. So this is a project for the future. I mean, probably herba mate will be a big part of our production in or quite not big, but bigger than now in at least 20 years. So it takes really long time, but we must be ready. So we are living now some changes, and we must be ready to maintain and protect the quality of our wines. And the late maturation help us with the acidity and the freshness. That's a very important characteristic for a Franciacorta wine.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. And okay, let's swap over to a gallery view. So we've sort of talked the talk. Let's see, did the wines walk the walk? I don't know who wants to kick off. Hopefully everyone had some fun tasting through the samples. I'm sure over the last sort of few hot days, people have been inspired to open. Does anyone say, what were your general sort of impressions of the wines and styles tasted? And you know, do you think it's a fair representation of diversity? Was anyone sort of fairly unfamiliar with Franciacorta, and that was a useful sort of exploration of what it produces? Louise, you're nodding slightly. Perhaps you'd just like to kick off with a few thoughts about. We don't have to discuss every wine in detail, but just generally as a package, I think that was a fair representation of what Franciacorta offers. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Though I'm not entirely sure it's a fair representation of what you could get in the UK, though. I have no idea if these are all UK trade or generally available, but you find it very hard in the trade to find a diverse selection of Franciacorta. There tend to be only a few knocking about, and I honestly can't remember the last time I tried a rosé Franciacorta, so that was really interesting. And then,
sorry, just to interrupt you, the rosé Franciacorta, I think, was it also 20? It was an
15?
older vintage.
15.
It was 15, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely delicious and came as a complete surprise. Yeah.
I thought it was better, dare I say it, than a few champagnes I've tasted, rosé champagnes.
I think you're in good company to say that. I mean, we tried there's Sarton, and there was a Zero Dosage, Brut, one or two others. So sorry we haven't got the list for the viewers up actually. But Louise, sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, that's all right. And then the other one, I can't remember the last time I tasted a proper vintage Franciacorta as well. Like I said, it's not something we really see a huge amount of in the trades and or probably concentrate on, to be honest. But the Anna Maria Clementi, the 2011 by Caldabosco, I thought that was utterly delicious. Yeah. Very smooth, beautifully balanced, great structure. I thought that was a really special wine, actually.
Well, interesting. I tried a few, opened a few with non-wine trade friends, and one of the comments back, and forgive me, Laura, but there are just always going to be comparisons with champagne given the price. So increasingly here with English sparkling wine as well. But I think overall, just felt there was a sort of slightly softer, more approachable style, not just the Saturn, but throughout the wines actually, that there were very attractive, approachable styles. But I don't know, Ken, do you want to pick up with any comments about the package that is Franciacorta as we looked? Yeah,
I was really interested to see the Saturn. Interestingly, it was from 1701, which is the range we actually stock. That's fully biodynamic, and I hadn't actually seen it or tried it, and I was really interested, and I thought it was great to see them, doing this style. And I also thought as you say, you know, the vintages, the rosé, we don't see much of that over here. And for me, I was like, I sat up a little bit, and my daughter's 21st birthday party with the rosé yesterday was a high point, and they were all like, Dad, have you got any more in the fridge? And I'm like, no, I'm afraid not. It's like one sample. So for me, it was really useful to see that, and it's, you know, certainly inspired myself and my buyer Sarah to have a proper look at the, you know, the full range you can get in the UK, because as Louise said, and I didn't do enough checking, I'm afraid, you know, are we able to get this full range relatively easily without having to take on a whole raft of new suppliers, I guess is the question for me. Because that gets quite exciting then, because, you know, there are an increasing amount of slots on a wine list for sparkling wine at the moment. That, you know, the English is nailed on, champagne is fairly nailed on, and then there's a sort of fighting middle area which can be all around that price point. And, you know, the more diversity and interest we can bring into that, the more likely Franciacorta is going to, you know, get those all important slots, and they sell. I mean, they really do sell. Sorry, Andrew, you're silent.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got a slight problem this end. There is an escaped puppy in the room making noise. So next time I go on to silent, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to have to bring her up and calm her down. So I don't know, Margherita, hi, I know you had difficulty joining us to begin with. But yeah, we're just talking a little bit. Hi there, really good to see you. Margherita is at Corney and Barrow. Good to see you. Margherita, what about that? What about for you, where the various styles might fit into your portfolio? Is there indeed room? We've had the March of English Sparkling. Obviously, Prosecco is still doing great guns at the more of the entry level. Champagne sort of recovered a bit. What are the chances for Franciacorta of creating itself a bigger footprint on lists?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. As you were saying, you know, typically in a wine list, you would see the Prosecco at the, you know, more the entry level, and then you will see a champagne. And sometimes the champagne has a dedicated section, but sometimes it's not, and it's part of the same sparkling category. So it's a bit difficult, or at least it's challenging. It's a challenge to put something in between. People know more about the cava, and they know more about the crémant, but of course the crémant might be undercutting the Franciacorta because it can come in at a lower price. So it's quite challenging, but there can be a gap in between these two. And also we have to remember that obviously the UK market is very saturated market, and the sparkling wine category is become highly commoditized. So the Prosecco has become, you know, a brand in itself, in its own right, and so has the champagne. And people know about the cava, people know about the crémant. What we need to do with the Franciacorta, I guess, is create a little bit of an identity, because there's a lack of identity. Not many people know about it. And those who know about it are, yeah, stunned, like all of us here, about the quality. But yeah, it's a challenge to put it in between these two very strong categories, but yeah, it would be in there. And also from a point of view of talking about the rivals, so to say, for Franciacorta, I think there are different angles at which we can look at, because if we look just stylistically, then you can think, okay, there are other wines that are bottle fermented, so you would think champagne, cava, and crémant. But there's also the angle of the price. So if you just look from a price point of view, you've got your Franciacorta, which could go from a 22, 23, 24 pounds to maybe a maximum of 35 for the big bulk of it. Then, of course, you can have more expensive ones. And so on the lower spectrum of the price, you could also compete with the Proseccos DOCGs, like the very grown cru, like the Cartizze, which we also have at Corney and Barrow. And so the rivals are, I think, there's a very broad range of rivals, so to say, but definitely, I mean, something to keep our eyes open for, because I've tasted them last night and today again, and they're stunning. Specifically for me, the Satin would be the one to start with, because it's got unique selling points. You know, the lower atmosphere, which is bottled, all white grape varieties, and now the introduction of the Herba Mate, which is obviously unique. So for me, that one would have the spotlight, yes.
That's interesting, because don't put my oar in too much, but I was also thinking that while I was tasting that's a nice story behind it, and it's a point of difference, you know, which we'll definitely come to Isabella for an off-trade view in a sec, but Sara, you were nodding your head a little bit. I mean, Margherita just said there's a bit of a blank slate, really, but I guess we also possibly need to address the possibility that obviously, Prosecco is done phenomenally well. You know, Italian sparkling wine sort of storming the market, obviously a completely different style and almost completely in a different price category. So that's another sort of facet that we might have to look at in terms of how Franciacorta, just to spin that round, uses that blank slate to come in with its best foot. And of course, Franciacortas are stocked in the UK, but I would say it's not that well known. So yeah, what does it need to do to really sort of push forward its best foot?
From the point of view of the restaurant, I would say, yeah, Franciacorta is not, for the English consumer, is not well known yet as can be a Prosecco, as it can be, you know, we said like English sparkling and cava. But I think we can still do some, like what we're doing today, for example, you know, take a group of people from different sectors and explain it, and also do maybe some wine seminar for the sommelier and the wine trade. That will be very helpful, for example, and do also just explaining what is for you, like Franciacorta, why it can be so distinctive from the other, you know, wine, like, for example, from...
Sorry, we've lost you, Sara. You're frozen for a moment.
Oh, sorry about it.
You were saying why Franciacorta can be so, explaining why Franciacorta.
Yeah, exactly. What are the key selling points, let's say, to go rather than to Franciacorta rather than a champagne, for example, you know? And, you know, yeah, that's for me what it can be done. And, you know, you can see also from the sample that we tasted, I agree with Louise Kent, what they say. For me, also Anna Maria Clementi was, you know, a stand-up, and also it was quite surprising and interesting style. And, you know, while I was drinking and sipping, I was thinking this could work very well in my restaurant. I mean, the guests will be very happy, you know, and need people who are trained and explain also the story of the Franciacorta. It has very long tradition, you know. So I can hear you. So you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just saying you have perhaps you have the accent to be even more convincing to explain.
Absolutely, that's a plus. That's the plus.
It's a big plus English. Isabella, Majestic. I mean, how much Franciacorta? I should have checked before you came on, but how much Franciacorta do you carry, and how much do you sell, and what's the sort of customer response to it?
Yeah, so we have one, and I went into the range in October last year, so it's pretty new. And it was in terms of a trial, just to see, because as a wine specialist, we think we should have it within the portfolio, absolutely. And we have stores that have very engaged colleagues who obviously are WSET qualified and therefore are very engaged within the consumers, to help educate and lead with that, because I think in terms of any other multiple retailer, that at that point it would be incredibly difficult to be able to get across what the product is. As we've touched on, you know, it really isn't terribly well known within the UK at the moment. So yes, we do have one. We did do feature within some of our Christmas publications and things like that. We probably limit the amount we promote it from a volume perspective as well. But sales have increased. As I say, it has only been in a short time, but we do want to keep it within the range. And ideally, you know, looking at the different styles that we looked at within the samples, I agree with a lot of what's already been said, particularly about the Satan, that food friendly, and if you can just get that communication to consumers about that, and maybe they haven't thought about having it with food, maybe more as an aperitif, I think it could be just a different angle for people to come from. So yeah, and I think ideally in the next few years we'd like to build upon the Franciacortas within the range, but at the moment absolutely where we're at is we wouldn't go any further at this current point in time.
Yes, okay. So it's still very niche, but you brought it on, and it's likely to remain on shelf. So that's a good story so far. Just interesting. I mean, Laura, a couple of quick questions for you actually. Where is Franciacorta looking to? What do you see as your key sales ground, your key channels in the UK, your key positioning?
I think that to sell Franciacorta or to let people know Franciacorta, because it's a market that must be still built. First of all, we must give to the Franciacorta wines the right identity and position. For example, following what Margherita and Sara said, find a position in the wine list as category. So give to the wine the identity and say Franciacorta category, and there you can find all our styles. The fundamental thing is that Franciacorta must be understood for its value and presented as a fine wine, but at the same time very accessible. I think Margherita also pay attention to the range of price. I mean, you can find different prices on these wines, and a lot of people can really approach to the wine, and it's something new, something that maybe people doesn't know, but it's very important to pour this wine. Once the bubbles starts to come up into the glasses and people taste our wines, very often they are surprised about the quality of the wine. I think always they are surprised for the quality of the wine, and there starts the work for you and for people who work in wine business to explain what people is drinking. So explain that this is Franciacorta, and under this name we have the wine region, the method of production, and the wine. So we must explain this name as its whole meaning. And so that the first ambition is to appear in a wine list as category and not generally speaking about sparkling. I think that all of us says people knows champagne, cava, and prosecco. This is another category to know, so something new. At the beginning, nobody, probably people going back in the past know about cava, but step by step the market was built. We are a small wine area, so the numbers are not so huge, but we are an excellence from Italy, and people who is curious to taste something special can go straight on to a glass of Franciacorta.
So, panel, is that just too much of a big ask? I can see why Laura, as a producer and also as vice president of the Franciacorta Consorzio, would be delighted if any of you created a whole Franciacorta section on your sparkling wine list.
This is a suggestion. We are not obliged, for sure, but it's really a nice way to start.
Of course, but at least one of the questions that I actually wanted to ask. I mean, does it not help? I mean, we're looking at a fairly moribund, well, pre-pandemic, because everything has been thrown into sort of confusion and uncertainty. But pre-pandemic, a pretty moribund, flat wine market. Sparkling wine, one of the few areas of growth, as I think I mentioned in my intro. Is it the case that by creating a stronger and broader category section on the list or on your shelves, that you are likely to sell more, to attract more customers in? You've got more choice. I'm sure it'll remain the same, that one or two mainstays remain the big sellers, but does that help, or is that pie in the sky thinking that by broadening out a successful section of your list, then you can make it even more successful? Who's Louise? You were nodding and smiling. I'm either talking complete nonsense or maybe you agree.
No, I agree. Actually, I don't pour a prosecco. I don't even list a prosecco. I don't have one in the building. So I actually pour a Franciacorta by the glass, a Satine. But I've been, obviously pre-pandemic, because everything went a little bit wonky, I was planning on increasing the range of styles of Franciacorta. because every time we've recommended it in place of Prosecco, you know, people have absolutely loved it. So I definitely want to, I was looking to do it a couple of years ago, but then various things happened. So it's kind of on my list for maybe the beginning of next year, once we know what the new version of normal is going to be in terms of customers and business, to actually extend the range of Franciacorta. But it's proving a little difficult unless you know, if you've got proper Italian specialists, to actually find a nice diverse range.
And what's the difference going to be if I stroll into Heckfield Place expecting to spend, to reference Halfpenny, on a glass of Prosecco on and I'm presented with Franciacorta Satin by the glass. What sort of price is that coming in at by the glass?
It comes in just under our pouring. It's essentially our, I hate to say the word cheapest, but it is our entry level pouring sparkling, and it's about £2 under the pouring champagne per glass. So it's about £12 a glass, I believe.
Okay, I think that sounds fair. Where's I going with that? I mean, Kent, I think you touched on this earlier, actually, when you were talking about having a broader range. Is it likely to be beneficial to expand the part of your wine list, or lists in your case, that are successful?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, actually. Recently, we've been under increasing pressure from the public who are becoming more and more interested in different areas of sparkling wine. So we've added a sparkling Lambrusco recently, which just sells all day long. I mean, the amount of it, we get groups of people coming in going, oh my goodness, I've got to have that sparkling Lambrusco that you do. It's just amazing. And we do the very best we can find. It drinks beautifully, it's fun, people are really interested in it. Pet Nat, we've got 2 Pet Nats now. So we've got about 10 or maybe 12 sparkling by the glass. And, you know, it's just grown and grown and grown from, you know, starting 3 years ago. And it's these sort of different areas which are just coming in. So England, you know, English sparkling, you can't avoid that now. I mean, you've got to have at least 2. We've got a Cremant from Bry Valley, which we just sell bucket loads of. And I've been absolutely amazed when we opened Oxford, the amount of tables that sit down and just have 2 glasses of sparkling wine all day long, which is really exciting. I mean, it really is. And I'll go back to a point, I can't remember who said it, but I think it was Isabella. For us, we've got 2 parts to our business. We've got our retail side, we've got 400 wines and probably 20 or 30 sparkling. And then we've got our on trade, so our wine bar and our restaurant. Wine bar and a restaurant, we can sell Franciacorta absolutely no problem at all. We can sell the different styles because we get to the table side, you know, at Heckfield Place, you must be the same. You can get to speak to people about it. If they're interested, they'll ask you, and they love that opportunity for us to sell. If we can't get to people on the shelves and talk to them, they will not pick it off the shelves naturally. They will go for something safe. They will go for Prosecco. They will go for Cava. They will go for Champagne, depending on where they want it. And now English as well. I've seen a little bit of movement in Trento Dock, actually, which has been interesting. But, you know, if we can't get to them and go, you've got to try this, it's really good, you should really look at it, it won't sell because they don't recognize it anywhere near as closely. And I think, you know, the big 3 have got a job to do, Bella Vista, Berlucchi and Caldabosco. You know, they have large, deep pockets, I imagine, and, you know, they've done a good job of marketing it in their home market from what I can see, and I'm not an expert. You know, they need to be investing in these new markets, which is us, and I think that could make a big difference.
So
there you are. That's my thought for you, Laura.
Thank you. I think, Laura, what Kent's saying is that rather than us all sitting behind our screens here, we actually need to be out in Franciacorta having this discussion over lunch and some good wines. But joking aside, I wasn't joking. Sarah, do you think, I mean, you were nodding quite vigorously. Laura was saying it would be great, obviously, if you could have a Franciacorta category in the same way that you will have champagne and it is fleshed out with different styles and a price ladder. Would it perhaps then make more sense with Italy doing well, interest growing in the wealth of indigenous varieties, still wines, etc., and the wines from Italy from the less sort of well-trodden, less big name places? Might it make sense on a list to have a defined Italian sparkling section? Because then you can have Prosecco, you can have high-end Lambrusco, which is fun and fantastic. You can have Franciacorta, you can have a Spumante somewhere else and they're from somewhere else in Italy.
Yes, I think it will be, like in my case, it will be quite interesting to have maybe three. I mean, I don't have a big range of sparkling wine. Mm-hmm. So I think if I start to put 3 different Franciacorta, let's say a Satin, like a Franciacorta blend, and then a Rosé, it could make a big, a huge impact, something different from the consumer. Maybe they want to go something different rather than a champagne, especially, with something vintage or with a story behind. Like you mentioned Lambrusco, one of the key selling points of Lambrusco is the holiday, that many consumers, they were there for holiday. Actually, maybe they want to, to live again that period. So that's why sometimes they actually take in that wine. So maybe, maybe you go to Lombardy for holiday, they want Franciacorta.
Yeah, but I was obviously in Franciacorta's case, it's looking to be the sort of the halo, the crown sitting at the top.
Absolutely, yes. It depends also on the price category of what was the producer and what's the winemaking, and then we can have a different level of prices. So it depends.
Actually, I had a quick question for you, Laura, here, because I think this might be interesting to see how it's done in Italy. And we've already said that Franciacorta, it's not a massive area in terms of production. Are Franciacorta sales or listings in Italy, do they tend to be confined more regionally to the north? Do they tend to be primarily restaurants, or are people drinking Franciacorta also at home sections? Basically, where and how does it sell in Italy? That's quite interesting.
So first of all, Franciacorta is a very versatile wine, and thanks to the different styles and different characteristics on vintage and non-vintage, you can really drink and taste this wine in many occasions. I mean, it can be simply an aperitif, so just to start a meal, or simply alone. It can be paired with a huge number of food, so people can really enjoy Franciacorta in a lot of different moments during the day. And it's more and more popular to pour Franciacorta during a meal by the glass, and especially during lockdown, the last 1 year and a half, we've discovered that people enjoy a lot Franciacorta at home too. So a lot of different occasions where people want to drink this wine. The market is mainly for north and center of Italy, but also the south is really increasing a lot the purchase. So 85% of the production still remain in Italy, but you also have to consider that we are a quite young wine area in terms of numbers of production, in terms of marketing investment. So we still have to discover and improve not improve, but increase the availability of the wine in foreign countries. So UK market is for sure one of the target for us. And I travel quite often to visit your country, and honestly, I often find a lot of interest in Franciacorta. For sure, as you told us, it's not easy, and a sale of Franciacorta must be follow explaining to the customer what they are buying, or suggesting them to buy Franciacorta is quite, the sale is quite never spontaneous. But I also see that when you suggest Franciacorta and people go back home, they come back to buy it again, and that's very important also. So they find the quality and they are surprised by the quality and they decided to taste it again. So it's not, it's a step-by-step market that can be built, I think, with a lot of good expectation. You don't have to wait an occasion to open a bottle of Franciacorta. Franciacorta is the occasion. So,
well, as I'm sure you know, I mean, that's been one of the big evolutions in the UK is that people have moved beyond sparkling wine for a celebration to more of an everyday occasion. It's just, what the hell, it's Wednesday evening, let's have a glass of sparkling wine, because
and the same, it's in Italy, exactly the same. And this is for a very wide range of consumer. I mean, from very young and new wine consumer to a little bit more aged people. It's really, really versatile, and a lot of people is approaching to this kind of wine, sip after sip. Yeah.
So a question from Irving So, the audience. Hi, Irving. Thanks for your question. It's one for you, Laura. Actually, it's Irving asks, why is Franciacorta successful in Switzerland and Japan? Which I think is quite an interesting.
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Irving is asking, the question is, why is Franciacorta successful in Switzerland and Japan? I assume those are quite good export markets for you.
Yeah, they are two very good markets. The main reason is because we've started to sell in these two markets a long time ago. Switzerland, because it's very close to us. I mean, 1 hour from here, you are in Switzerland. So it's very easy also for people to travel and come here to the wineries or to visit the wine area and to know everything behind the bottle. So it's more easy to build this market. And Japan, they are really crazy for made in Italy, and probably they want to know something new, and they also like to know all the small particular production of our country, and they've started to buy Franciacorta 40 years ago. So it's a market. Even there at the beginning, it was a very, very small amount of we sold a small amount of bottle, but step by step the market must be built. So it takes long time. In Japan, we are doing a good job, and we are now working to increase the global market for our wines.
Okay, sure, thank you. Now I'm just aware of time, and we're a little short, but I feel we could. There's so much we could still discuss. I want to touch on sustainability, and I thought I made a note earlier. I think it was 71.4% of the vineyards are classified as organic, and there are broader sustainability programs surrounding that in the region, which was quite remarkable. Given the wines, the style of wine, sparkling, the sort of price levels they're selling at, is how much of an additional hook is that, do you think, for customers? And I think maybe we'll go. I mean, Isabella, in the off trade, is that something that could help you to sell Franciacorta?
I think it's still quite early from an organic point of view, from a retail perspective. Now, over the last few years, I've been involved in a few different things where we put a few different of those key product wines as organic, because obviously they're already naturally popular. It's the natural step to trial with those first. And there's been varying degrees of success. I still think it is quite challenging to convey to a consumer why they are paying more for the organic. And I think that education piece and conversation, obviously people who are naturally engaged within sustainability and they're seeking that out, then we need to have products within the portfolio for those customers. And I think it's just, how do you encourage others to try them, I think is a bit of a challenge.
So at the moment, possibly for you and your customers, it's a nice to have if they ask, but not necessary. There are more primary messages to get across. I mean, if you take Kent, if we could return to you, it's part of your customer expectation much more, surely, that you're looking at sustainability as an integral part of the offer of your businesses. again, what is it a different scenario for you? You can put this on the table and go, yep, it's organic, it's sustainable, sustainably produced on the whole, and
yeah,
and it happens to be fine Italian sparkling wine, or is that again a sort of messaging too far when you're trying to get across the F word basically to begin with?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't get listed with us unless it was sustainable. And as I mentioned earlier, 1701 is biodynamic as well, which has a huge advantage for us. Our customers come to us not primarily for our sustainability, but they're certainly a part of their reasoning. And we feel very comfortable talking about, it with everyone we do, and having a region such as Franciacorta where over 70% are sustainable, I think is a huge positive for us. And Laura, tell me if I'm wrong, but I've been hearing that there's a push for 100% sustainability in Franciacorta, and that yes, okay, it's not the official move from the Corney, but and for us, that absolutely ticks every box we could ever want, because we genuinely believe it makes better wine. We think that it's obviously better for the land, and it's better for the people who are coming along and going to be inheriting the land. So in every way, it works for us as a business and our ethos. So we would really, if Franciacorta would put their flag up the pole and go, we're striving to be 100%. It's something that someone like ourselves, and we're not the only people, there's plenty of us out there who would go, actually, you know what, we're going to champion this over Trento, where that's not the case, or something like that.
And I know, Laura, you want to jump in. Can I just get one more quick comment from Margherita and just say, from the Corney and Barrow perspective, I mean, organic and sustainable, does that add to a quality halo, or is that still a little bit of a distraction with customers?
No, it is absolutely very important, and we do get customers who specifically ask for organic wines in the on-trade. So it's always an added bonus, and it's another selling point, and more of our producers also are turning organic and are certified organic. So absolutely a brilliant point.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Laura, did you want to have a say? I know you were nodding when Kent was speaking.
It's just to follow Kent, Mr. Kent. We are really working as wine area in the direction of the sustainability and biodiversity. It means that we are working to form our farmer to the right approach to the viticulture, not only organic, but to protect our biodiversity is a way of life. It's a project for the future. I mean, we don't only have to take care about the quality of the wines, we have to take care about the quality of everything that surrounds us, starting from the soil, the vines, and also of people living in the area. So I live here, my kids live here, and we have to guarantee a quality for the future. 360 degrees, it means, yeah, we are 71% organic, but the sustainability and the biodiversity is 100%. It's for the entire area. So we are working very hard and studying a lot in this direction to have the knowledge of the state of art and to be able to preserve this richness for us and for the future. So this is a very interesting challenge. I mainly follow the vineyards for my winery. I'm an enologist, but anyway, I spend a lot of time outside into the vineyards, and I'm really living this changing in a better way. I mean, if you walk into a vineyard, you can see really butterflies, ladybugs, worms, some snakes also. But there's a life that grow with us, and that's very important. It means that the environment is living well, and the nature give us back this richness in the wines. So it's a very wide project, and we are very ambitious on this. Yeah.
I think perhaps the important thing there is that we're moving fast, and this could very probably be accelerated by the pandemic, from a situation where, you know, a growing degree of customers would say, is this organic? Is this sustainable? To a situation where people may not ask the question the whole time, but the question will reverse to, why isn't this sustainable? Why isn't this organically produced? And it's just a shift that's happening, I think, very, very fast now. So by being ahead of the game, you've already sort of ticked that particular box, that important box. So it bodes well for the future. I'm just aware of time, but I thought a very good question comes from one of our panelists, Sara, which I don't know if you want to ask, I can ask on your behalf. You popped into the chat much earlier. What about single vineyard? Is it something the Consorzio is going to look at in the classification? And I think that's really interesting, because if you take a rival region, France's flagship region, Champagne, obviously grower champagnes have been, you know, really, really fashionable and really sort of got their hooks into sommeliers and independent merchants and people like myself, been absolutely fantastic. And there's a few faces smiling here. So yeah, what about single vineyard wines? I mean, obviously they don't have to be grower ones specifically, but a greater sort of emphasis on specific sites, specific vineyard. Is that something that might be built into the classification of Franciacorta? Sara, was that a fair representation?
Yeah, exactly. Because when also I was reading about the different style of Franciacorta, it was more about, yes, the grape, the sugar, and the winemaking, you know, the aging. But then it came up in my mind, what about a single vineyard style? Is something like, is it popular, or you just maybe focus on blending grape and blending also land?
We are doing, so we are so lucky to have the names of our vineyards starting from the Catasto Napoleonico. So it's more than 200 years that our vineyard has a name, has an identity. Actually, we are starting from the Catasto Napoleonico. We are trying to update this classification and to give to all the vineyards and all the municipalities a new classification, a new name, a new identity. At the moment, this work is in progress, because it's not easy. We've found more than 1,000 different names and small areas. And these sometimes are really small areas. So not big enough to produce one wine, a single wine. And at the moment, I think that it's also very interesting to work with the small pieces of all the single identities. I give you an example. In my winery, we obtain every harvest from 100 to 110 different wines that are 100 different identities. Some Chardonnay give us freshness, some other give us acidity, some other structure, and the same for the Pinot Noir. And at the moment, it's very interesting to do our cuvée like a mosaic, bringing the different small pieces of the single identity to obtain a new picture, a new wine. I also believe at the same time, when tasting the single vineyards, that some of these are so beautiful that should be a nice project to do a wine from this single. But to do this, we have to have a name and find the right classification. So we are working on the direction of studying more and more the particular situation, the particular vineyards, the specific identities in the area. It's again a long project because it takes time also to do microvinification. I hope it's a correct word in English. So small production to verify also these identities in different harvests and to coordinate all this information. But yeah, we are open to a lot of different studies, as I told you. And one of these big projects is the zonazione or menzioni geografiche. And in Italiano we call it. Sara, help me with the translation of this word.
Geographical mention. Yeah, the geographical. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Sara.
Excellent. Well, no, thank you. And that's really fascinating. Actually, I wasn't aware of quite how much work is going on in the region. So, Sara, does that answer your?
Absolutely.
Pretty thoroughly. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. Well, I think possibly it's a good time. We've covered a lot of ground. I don't know if anyone else wanted to jump in, sort of by way of summing up, with any further thoughts about Franciacorta and the UK market specifically, or have we covered everything we wish to say? Anyone want to sort of pop their hand up? Any last second question from the audience there? So do fire it in. Otherwise, I think it's just a really fascinating moment to see, and this will depend, I suppose, on Franciacorta itself and how much it puts behind the UK market. You've obviously said that it's one of the priority markets for you. So and it's a healthy market in terms of, although crowded in terms of sparkling wine at the moment. So it looks to me, despite the long heritage of Franciacorta and place in the Italian market, that in a way it's still very, very early days in the UK market in terms of making its presence felt. So it sort of feels like the beginning of a journey here, and one that could be very exciting. So that's my sense of the whole thing at the moment, and where Franciacorta stands. So anyone any last words? Laura, do you want to have any final words in terms of what you've heard back from the UK panel?
No, it was very interesting for me to hear about the perception of Franciacorta and to know which are the difficulties you find in selling our wine. So I hope that a good cooperation between the Consorzio and the players in the market should help very much to build this new and very interesting market. I think it's the right time to invest again, to build the knowledge of this wine in this market, and we are ready. Thank you for giving us all this interesting information and points of view.
Well, thank you as well, Laura, and the Consorzio for choosing to work with Harpers and giving us the opportunity for this discussion, which has been fantastic, and it's certainly increased my sort of knowledge of Franciacorta. I'm looking forward. I still have a few stoppered bottles to relaxing and enjoying the wines a little later, rather than simply tasting. And thank you very much, Louise, Isabella, Kent, Sara, and Margherita. Finally made it on. I hope it's been informative and enjoyable for you too. So thank you very much for your time in joining us. Anyone else out there wants to share, audience, I should say, thanks for joining as well. There will be a link available, and this session will go up on the Harpers website as well, harpers.co.uk, in a few days, just with a few little editorial neatening ups. So you'll be able to catch up with it and point other people towards it if they'd like to tune in. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Ciao.